Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today, I'm joined with Brigitta Hoeferle, who is the CEO and master trainer at the NLP Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Brigitta, thanks for joining me today.
Dan, thanks for having me. I'm excited. Let's see where this takes us.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the conversation. Before we started recording, I'd mentioned to you that you have something on your LinkedIn page where you say that you're guiding leaders through continuous learning. And I love that because it's something that I'd learned throughout my years of coaching, baseball and softball, that I'd never stopped learning. Like I was always, even up into my, 30th year of coaching, I would still go to coaching clinics and surround myself with others who knew more than I did. I'd never felt that I had kind of reached the pinnacle. However, I know many others in my field and in other professions who do kind of get to a point where they feel they don't have to learn anymore. Like they've been doing it long enough. And I think that's a very, very dangerous space to be in. So, um, because you have that statement on your LinkedIn profile page, you know, what is it that drove you to understand the importance that we never stop learning, that we should never stop learning?
That's a loaded question. I want to go into all of that. And it starts out with me, right? But what I want to lead with what I want to say first is there are too many people out there that say three deadly words in a sentence. And that's where all learning goes, or all growth, or all continuous, whatever it is that their success goes to die. And those are the three words. I know that. And when you say, I know that, then you are verbally and non-verbally sending a message to your brain that says, okay, we're done here. Guys, wrap up. We can pack up and go home. Because that's literally what our brain's doing. It shuts off. And when our brain shuts off, there's truly no more feeding the intellect and no more feeding the feedback. It's not failure, right? One of the laws that I teach is there is only feedback, there is no failure. But when we can see that, we're also not afraid to learn more or to go on the exploration of what do I not know yet, right? We've all read the studies that the human brain is only used somewhere between 8 and 10%. Holy cow, that leaves 90% of capacity that we can actually use. So here's the story. And it's a humble one, it's a vulnerable one, and it's at times it's a funny one too. I came to as you probably noticed, Brigitta Hoeferle is not really an American name. When I met my husband, and we're both German, and we met in Munich as I was working for a publishing house. He was working for a different publishing house. I was working for the marketing side and the ads and all of that. And he was working on the editorial side. So just if you know anything about print media or media all in itself, those two departments don't really get along really well, right? Because the advertisement side says, hey, these guys have a really good product. I think you should be writing about them. And these guys over here say, I'm going to write about whatever I want. I'm not going to write because someone paid X amount of dollars. Anyway, that's total side note. But we made it work 21 years in. So my husband and I met in Germany. We decided to move to the States. That journey all in itself is a long story. And we did. We built a Montessori school up in Tennessee in the Chattanooga area. And here I am. I got 2 degrees. I'm German. What do they say about German cars and German engineering and all of that? I kind of went a little bit in my head when I came to the States. Like I said, I'm going to be really, transparent and raw with you guys. And I built the school, did a great job in building it, hiring staff, getting people really excited about this new methodology that I brought to a small town in Tennessee. If you ever heard of Cleveland, Tennessee, it's actually the second largest Cleveland in the United States, right behind Ohio. And here we come. I do a great job. I was in my early 30s. I do a great job in getting in touch with the Chamber of Commerce and all of the associations and getting the word out. And I'm successful until the first staff that I hired, that I trained, that I poured all of my energy and love and money into them. They hung around maybe a year and a half, max 2, and then they left. And I was like, well, that sucks, right? If you know anything about Tennessee, just like Georgia, it's a at will, how do you say, at right to work state, something like that. Don't quote me on it. So anyone can just pack their bags and leave, drop their pencil and go. It's literally what happened. And in the beginning, I thought, well, I had 13 staff members. Well, they're dummies, right? They don't see an opportunity when they have one. So it happened over the next 3-4 years. It happened over and over and over and over again. And I kept pointing outwards and kept pointing out the flaws in others of how they can't see an opportunity and, all the things that I chose for my mind to keep me occupied, to really take a look in the mirror and go, you sure it's them? So I pointed fingers for a few years. And I finally, when you have a huge turnaround in your business, maybe a school or any other business and staff, your clients are going to go, something's up. So who are my clients? My clients are parents, and they are the ones that pay the tuition for their kids that come to my school. So now it became an even more tangible problem, because now I'm losing time and money on my staff, because I trained all of them in the Montessori diploma, which is a very intense certification. Then I lose parents, I lose the tuition money, and word gets around in the little city that we have a school in. So now it becomes even more tangible. And I finally turned the finger, which I've been pointing three fingers all along at myself as I was pointing to others, saying, okay, what am I doing wrong? Where am I missing the boat? What do I still have to learn? What's the lesson in this? And that, Dan, that shifted everything. But I literally had to hit rock bottom, because at that point, I didn't have a coach. I didn't have, business mentor. I got great advice from the Small Business Development Center. That was awesome. But it didn't give me what I really needed. They gave me the tangibles to build a business. And that was a bitter pill to swallow. And that's when I went on the journey of finding a mentor, finding a coach, of going to more classes, learning more. And I literally have not stopped since then. So that was around 2007, and then 2008 came, and that was a real hit in the gut. But if I would have not been prepared for 2008, and now, looking back, I was prepared for 2008, I would have not made it over that hump. And that was a big hump.
Yeah.
So all that to say, I know it's a long-winded story and answer to your question. All that to say, I had to learn it. And I had a choice when I started looking at myself, or I had a choice of even looking at myself. I could have continued as it was, and the school wouldn't be, now at 125 students up to middle school. That's not where it would be. It would be closed. So all that to say is, we have a choice in what we want to focus on. We have a choice in what we want to look at. And the harder or the more painful the process that you're in, the harder it is for you to look at it all by yourself. And I personally choose to work with leaders that have that mindset of, hey, a leader is a learner. Because you and I know there are enough leaders, self-announced gurus, you call them whatever you want, authorities, right? Influencers. They're like, I already know everything. Don't come tell me stuff. I already know. I know that, right? When you work with them, it feels like pushing a bear up trees.
Yeah. 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 And that's so true. I mean, it's you do see that quite a bit. And again, like I said, that's one of the worst positions you can get into, is once you think that you have learned it all. And I also understand that at times, it's tough as a leader to go out and seek help, because you're supposed to be the strong one. You're supposed to be the one to keep it together when things are going bad. Your staff is coming to you with problems. You're the problem solver. So there is also kind of breaking that down and saying, okay, I also need help though as well. So how tough is it, um, when people are coming, to you guys to continue their learning, to break that down, that even though you're in a leadership position, like, this is okay, because again, we all still need each other to learn and grow. So how do you go through that process of breaking somebody down like that?
Yeah. And thank you for that question. So I want to state something. You're right. Their leaders think, they got to hold all strings together. They got to hold everything together. And then the more they try to hold it together, the more it falls apart. And then they have to be this, I got this. And what goes out the window with that kind of mindset is the vulnerability, because we're humans. Leaders, no matter in which leadership position you're in, you're human. And it actually is okay to sometimes say, you know what? I don't know. Or let's find out. Let's go on the journey and find out. And who would make a great team so we can find that out together, and then give ownership. So now I'm going into answering your question, what you just said. First of all, the leaders got to be ready to at least realize or have an awareness of what I'm doing is no longer working, right? Sometimes we have HR, and I just spoke at a big HR conference yesterday here in Atlanta, and I did a whole group exercise with a big room of HR professionals. And sometimes HR calls us up and they're like, man, we got this one guy that is a team leader for this whole department, and I mean, no one can work with him. He's just bulldozing over people. We can't work with him. Like, he makes great numbers, but he is burning through our people, like bulldozing over the staff, right? But if that person is not ready to accept, like, they call us and they go, help, can you fix him? We're not in the fixing business, okay? This is not where we come with a tool belt and go, hey, bend over, let's do this a little bit and let's do that a little bit, right? So the first we can come in and we can have an open conversation in a safe space, but when they are not ready to say, you know what, I am seeing, with all the 360s and all the assessments and everything that we do, I see something coming back and it's painful, right? Now it's I get this feedback and it's constantly coming back, but no, that's not me. That's not, that's a totally false picture. Well, if enough people say it, it would be time for you to actually look at it and go, So And most people are resistant to looking at that because they have no clue what to do next. All they hear is there's something wrong with me. And that goes way back to programming when we were children, right? I personally, when I was a little girl, high energy, always out there. I grew up in a 600 people village, and all of the kids in the village, we all went to the same kindergarten, same first grade, and they all came over to our house. And from there, we did all sorts of mischievous things. I'm not going to get into now, but I was the leader of that. And my mom still likes to tell those stories. But I heard from not just from my parents, but from my sisters, Brigitta, what is wrong with you? Why do you always have to be so loud? Why do you always have to be so out there? Right? So over years and years, I learned that there is something wrong with me because my mom and dad said it, my sister said it. So all of these people of authority, because my sisters are 10 years older than me, well, if they say it, it must be true, right? So if we can start going on the journey and just listen to where that person is coming from and what are they really afraid of? Most people are afraid of rejection. They're afraid to lose their job. They're afraid if they lose their job, they might lose their house. They might lose their family. It's a whole chain reaction that is connected to that. And they don't know what to do first. And sometimes they just need someone, because at work, they can't talk to anyone because they're afraid. There's another fear. They're afraid that someone's going to stab them in the back and then they're out again, right? So at home, they might be the breadwinner. They might, again, be the person that holds it all together. They don't have someone to really talk to just, break down and even cry. And I said this yesterday at the conference because one person said, we have this team leader and he just doesn't understand and I need him to understand. And I said, well, first of all, you, like everyone else, you're not going to get him to understand anything. You're going to start building rapport with him, bring a coach in, that coach is going to create a safe space, and that stays between the coach and the person, the leader.
Right.
You then find, okay, what do we need to work on first? Because often it is not that initial pain of bulldozing over people, right? That is a side product that has been established. We got to go back and look at some of the limiting beliefs, look at some of the painful things that they heard over their life that programmed them. So I don't know, that was, again, very long-winded. I don't know if it answered your question, but that's where we would start. And it starts with an awareness, and then it continues from our side, actually, with silence and listening.
Yeah. That definitely answered the question.
I said that yesterday in that big group exercise, and I allowed silence just to be for a second as I was answering one of their questions. And I said, we're so afraid nowadays to just allow the space, to just allow silence. We're so quick at filling it with words and actions and stuff. And that can be a coping mechanism, but that is also there because there's not a self-confidence or a confidence in who we are as our individuals and what our purpose is as an individual or a collective. And when we allow that silence to be, we're starting, those layers start to peel off, and we can get into the center of what's really going on.
Yeah, I love that. And I want I know when I introduced you, I mentioned you're the CEO of the NLP Center in Atlanta, Georgia, but I want to dig down a little bit now into what what you do, what you guys do. And NLP stands for the Neuro-Linguistic Programming.
Right.
So if you can explain to my listeners, what does that mean? What is NLP? What is Neuro-Linguistic Programming? And how do
Yeah.
you guys put that into action in these leadership roles?
Yeah, yeah. So NLP, mouthful, neuro linguistic programming, as you said, neuro, our brain, our operating system, everything that, what we're about to do, that first starts here. That's also where our self-talk originates. So that's the neuro part. Linguistic is our language. And if you can see me, I'm pointing to my mouth, but linguistic, our communication is so much more than just the words that we're saying or how we're saying them. It is the entire body language. It is the words that we're saying, the tonality that we're using, the cadence and everything that is connected to that. And it's also the things that we're not saying. So that is the linguistic side. And then the programming side is something that I mentioned earlier. Programming equals conditioning. So we all have been, and I'm going to use this word program, we all have been programmed over the years that we've been alive. Within our imprint phase from age 0 to, or even before we were born, to around age 6, age 7, we go through an imprint phase. And that imprint phase is means that our conscious and our subconscious mind is one. That means every information, and we have about 2 million bits of information flying at us at any given moment. I would even say it's at least 3 million nowadays, because we have so much more going on, right? So let's just go with a very conservative number, 2 million bits of information flying at us at any second. When we are in our imprint phase, we take in information with no filter, and we also give it out with no filter, right? Children will tell the truth. You know the saying, children and drunk people will tell the truth. And that is because they don't have a filter. And that's a good thing, but they're also taking information in because without a filter. They don't have a reference point. They don't have a reference point when someone molests them. They don't have a reference point when someone is being nasty to them. I have an Italian neighbor. She has 4 kids, and her oldest is very high energy, and he just goes out and she yells at him, screams his name, and calls him stupido. And I'm like, what are you doing? What the not enough people understand what we are telling our children in that phase, in that imprint phase, becomes their truth. If we want it or not, it becomes their truth. And that is part of the belief system. Now, the good news is that we can break it down, but the older you are, the harder it is. And the more resistant you are to breaking down those walls, the harder it is as well, right? So the more open you are and the more willing you are to make a difference in your own life, the easier it will be. So that's neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. So the programming part, many people say, well, are you programming people? Guys, you're all being programmed at any given moment, right? The stop sign has programmed you to stop. The radio has programmed you to buy the weight loss pills. Music has programmed us to either get into a sad mood or an upbeat mood or whatever mood, right? Romantic mood, whatever it is. So we're constantly being programmed. The good news is that when we can decode our patterns and our programs, we can then intentionally encode it too. I'm going to say that again. So when we can break it down, and when we're aware of what our patterns and our programs are, we can then intentionally break it down and intentionally build it back up to something that we desire to have, right? That sounds easy. It's not as easy as I'm saying it, but that's what we do. So NLP is the meta program of our language. Basically, that's like, NLP 101, meta program of our language. Everyone uses it. Most of us misuse it. And I don't know if you have a question, but I can give an example of how most people misuse it.
No, go ahead. I'd love to hear that.
Okay. So there's a success pattern, and the success pattern is thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions, actions lead to results. Remember NLP. So thoughts, the neuro, feelings is what happens when we are thinking about it. And then we go into action. We say something and then we go do it, and then we have something to show for it or not. So that's a success pattern. Thoughts, feelings, actions, and that's the results that we get. Now, we've gotten really good at misusing this success pattern. Imagine this. You get up in the morning and you look outside and it's raining outside. And the first thought that you have is it's raining outside. The second thought is, it's going to be a nasty day. The feeling is, I don't want to get up. It's going to be a nasty day. What good can come from it? So you pull your blanket over your head. That's the action. And at the end of the day, you have nothing to show for, or little, right? You're like, I didn't do squat today, and I wanted to get all of these things done that were on my list, or I wanted to cook this special meal, or whatever it is, or I wanted to go, jump in the puddles with my kids, whatever it is that you wanted to do. But if it starts with that initial thought, now when we are aware that we're having these thoughts, and that comes through training and being aware that these thoughts are actually happening, right? And then there's a decision, and it happens in split seconds. There's a decision. How do I want to feel? Now let's look at the scenario again. It's raining outside. You look outside. Oh, it's raining. You acknowledge it. Ooh, I can get all of these things done. I can, clean out the pantry. I can respond to the 1,000 emails that I have, whatever it is that you have on your list. Now that gets you into a feeling of excitement. That gets you into a feeling of let's get stuff done, right? And that gets you into action. And at the end of the day, you have the results to show for, look, and it started with that thought, but you caught that thought. So that's how we're misusing the success pattern. And when you're aware of it, you're like, aha, now I have a tool.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, I can speak firsthand. I mean, I've gotten into a habit of, literally as soon as I wake up, just saying, thank you, God, for giving me another day of opportunity, and just kind of starting off that way. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now. And it's incredible how that first thought does kind of dictate the way the rest of your day is going to go. So that's, I can definitely attest to that being a fact.
And I love the gratitude part, Dan, right? Too many people are looking all the things that are not working or that they don't have. And when you come from a place of gratitude, it equalizes, or it neutralizes that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact is, I mean, no matter what we're going through at any given moment, there truthfully is probably someone somewhere going through something much worse than what you're going through,
Yeah.
and
In perspective.
yeah, and I think that's something that has helped me over the years as well, is just understanding that, yeah, you know what, I had a bad day today, but I'm still here, I'm still moving, I'm still walking around. I've got a friend of mine who oh man, she's 93 or 94 years old now. She was a former professional baseball player. Actually, if you're familiar with the movie A League of Their Own, she had played in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, Maybelle Bear.
Wow.
And she, every time I see her, I say, "Hey, Maybelle, how you doing?" And her first answer is, "Well, I woke up on this side of the ground, so I'm doing pretty good." And that's just a great way to approach it. Like, I woke up, so you know what? Things are going to be okay no matter what. So, yeah, starting your day off with gratitude is huge. So you went through kind of this difficult period where you had to learn that you didn't know-it-all, that you weren't, being the leader you should be. And kind of went through this transformation, and are now, running this center to help other leaders. What was it that made you then, after you kind of went through your experience and understanding how, how beneficial that was to you, you could have stopped there and just been like, okay, I'm going to find a mentor, I'm going to find a coach, and I'm just going to be a better leader in this space. But you wanted to go one step further and say, now I want to help others in their leadership roles as well. What was it about wanting to give back in that way? What was the inspiration behind that?
And that didn't happen at that moment because there was always already a bigger purpose. So one thing that you might not know about me, because I don't post it in my bios or anywhere, but I grew up as a missionary kid. My father was a missionary, and he traveled the world. He was in Germany, but the headquarters of the church was here in the States. And he traveled, in the beginning years, it was Hungary and Romania, and then the Iron Curtain came down. And then he was actually one of the first missionaries that went into Saudi Arabia. And I didn't know if I was going to ever see him again. We said goodbye at the airport, and it was like saying goodbye. I'm not sure if I'm going to see my dad again. So all that to say is, I grew up in a household where my father always ingrained in me that I am a tool for humanity. I didn't know what that meant, right? But just like, so that's a successful pattern. Just like I heard, Brigitta, you're just too much, what's wrong with you? Why do you have to be that way? I also learned that I'm a tool for humanity. And just like I took in all the other information that I, let go of, I kept the I'm a tool for humanity. And I must have been 6 years old. And I was sitting in front of our little black and white TV in this little village that I grew up. And I watched some kids show. And in between the kids show, there was an advertisement. And usually my parents would turn off the TV, or my sisters, but they didn't catch it. So it was these children, and I didn't know it was an ad because I didn't know what an ad was. So these children were, I'm seeing these children, bloated bellies, covered in flies, clearly hungry, not having any clothes. And I'm sitting there, and as I'm thinking about it, and I'm seeing this picture in front of me, the emotions are just like they were back when I saw it the first time. And I looked at my mother, and I cried, and I said, I'm going to help these children. And she said, that's awesome. How are you going to do that? Like, in her head, she's like, how are you going to, you're 6 years old. How are you going to do that? But if you know anything about Brigitta, which has the meaning one of strength, it also has the meaning of being really determined and being really tenacious. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'm just going to go do it. So I rallied up all the friends that I have already established, leader in the community. I rallied up all my friends, and I said, look, we all have stuff. We all have toys and stuffed animals and stuff we don't need. Let's go and sell it there's a little area in front of the bakehouse in our village. There's a house that was the bakehouse, and every Saturday, all of the women came to bake their breads and pies. Let's do banners and poster boards, plaster them around town, and we're going to sell our stuff. And the proceeds of our stuff will then go to, was bread for the world. And they're like, yeah, let's go do it. We have so much stuff. We don't need it. We need to help these children, right? So that was the idea. We made 160 Deutschmarks back then, which nowadays, I mean, if you've looked at the euro and the US dollar, it's nothing anymore. But anyway, it's about same, right? $160, just say about $160. And we sent that in. And I already forgot all about it. And months and months later, I got a thank you letter from Bread for the World. Said, "Thank you, Brigitta, for making a difference. Your donation has made a difference." And that was the beginning of me knowing that there's more. There's more than just what I can do, right? When we collaborate, when we lock arms, there's so much more that we can do. And I continue to, exude that in my work. And when I realized that and plugged into that purpose of a tool for humanity, there was no holding back.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And again, I think it just really drives home the point of how impressionable children are at those young ages. Because I know, again, I can attest, similar to you. My mom was always a giver. So when I was young, and I was much younger than both my brother and sister. So I was still at home, and she would volunteer with Meals on Wheels or, whatever it was. And she would, just, drag me along because I was there. And, as I got older, I just, volunteerism and giving back was just part of what I did then as an adult because of those early years of just being impressed upon that that's what you do. That's what we're supposed to do as human beings. And, with the organization that I'd run before Sandy and I started traveling, um, it was always more than about just baseball and softball and sports. We always had a component in there of giving back as well. And, the reason to that was, again, because I was a product of, being taught to give back at a young age and understanding. And, let's face it, volunteerism and giving back are things that are, in short supply right now. So, if we can get our kids, you know, have it driven home to them that this is what we're supposed to do, it's just going to make them, better humans later in life and, create a better world for us. So that was one of the driving forces. Because a lot of people, some of our parents didn't necessarily buy in, and they're like, "Hey, this is supposed to be about baseball and softball. Why do we have the kids, going and helping, with this Cups Compassion project or, giving food away or this and that?" And it's like, because it's not just about baseball and softball. It's about a whole lot more than that. And, the cool part is the parents who did buy in understood it and, really knew the difference we were making in those kids' lives. So, we're
and if I may add to that, and to do it for the right reasons, right? Like you're doing it for the right reasons, not to post it on social media and go, "Hey, look at me, great job. I went and volunteered." No, don't be that person, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because there are a lot there as well. It's funny, we did a project in Louisiana back in March it was, and we were helping with a state park there, Sam Houston Jones State Park, which had been totally devastated by the hurricanes of 2020, and hadn't been open for now going on a year and a half. And we were there. There was a group of about 50 of us that were volunteering, and I remember some of the park staff coming by as we were getting stuff done, and the one director said to us, "We've never had a group of volunteers like you guys. I mean, you guys are actually getting work done." He goes, "Most times it's, a couple minutes of work and then, 20 minutes of taking the selfie in front of a half-built this or that, because you guys are actually getting the work done." Yeah. We're like, "Well, yeah, well, that's what it's all about." So, yeah, it's very interesting times we live in for sure.
For sure.
So I don't know how much time we want to keep going here, but I do actually want to touch a little bit, just because of, knowing what it's like to kind of start a new chapter and a new journey. And I know this is kind of off topic from what, we've been talking about, but you said the story of you and your husband deciding to move, to the States is kind of a story in and of itself. But I do want to actually hear that, because it's something that is close to me, and understanding, again, getting out of that comfort zone, making a decision. My wife and I lived in our house for 20 years, and part of our community for our entire lives, and all of a sudden, we're just leaving everything behind and hopping in an RV and traveling across the country. So, um, your new journey might have been even a little bit more risky than ours. I mean, we were at least still in the same country and not not having to, I mean, most other countries, everyone's learning English anyway, so you probably already knew English pretty well before you came here. But there's a whole lot of differences between German culture and American culture. So just tell me a little bit about, like, what was that like? What led to that decision of let's pick up and go across the ocean and plant new roots?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love it. So as I mentioned earlier, both my husband and I worked in the publishing business, and that's how we met. I only moved. So quick pre-story. I grew up in Germany my entire life. I went to university here in Tennessee, to Christian University as an international student. And so that's where I learned much better English. My dad spoke English with me at home. My mom's German. My dad's German as well, but he was also a naturalized American. So I learned both languages, but German is my mother tongue. And if you ever heard a German speak, say sound more like sis, and say don't know how to pronunciate some words correctly. And I've worked on that over the years, and my husband has worked on his as well. So when we met, and I loved the work that I did. I traveled all around Europe for this job, worked for Murdoch Holding. And, when we met, my husband and I was already 29, and I said, I want to have kids. And he's like, I want to have kids too. So we're like, it's a done deal. With 3 weeks in, and he proposed, and it was like, okay, this is a good thing. Again, we've been married for 21 years now. And we said, look, we want to have kids. My first degree that I have is a social pedagogy and education science degree. I said, okay, if we want to have kids, I want our kids to go to a Montessori school, because I want them to grow up with a mindset that it's not just one right way of sitting in a bench and learning from a teacher that's just becoming the peanuts teacher, right? Wah, 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 wah. There's got to be other ways. And in my studies, I learned about Maria Montessori, and I said, I want my children, first when I went through my studies and I learned about Maria Montessori, I was like, wait, there's a different way of learning. There's actually no failure when we learn. There's just finding different ways of solving the problem. That's genius. Why didn't I go to a school like that? Because, I came home with a note written up. Brigitta wasn't quiet again, and Brigitta didn't do that again, all of those things. So long story short, I wanted my children to go to a Montessori school. So fast forward a year, we got married, got pregnant. And I said, okay, I love my job. I love what I do. I want to, find a really cool place for the kids to go to school. And I found out that Montessori schools had a 3-year wait in Munich. And there are 5 or 6 Montessori schools. There are probably more right now. And I said, well, shoot, now what? And slept on it. And the next day I had this eureka moment. And I said, wait a minute. I have a marketing degree. I know how to do business. I have an education degree. I know what it takes to I am a teacher. What I don't have yet is a Montessori degree. So, I got busy looking at what it takes to take a Montessori diploma. And I found a place in Knoxville to do like a virtual back then it wasn't virtual, it was more of a extended or how do you say, long distance study. That's what it was, long distance study. And it also needed me to be there they had like 6 summer sessions, so it was over 3 years. And every summer I had to go there for 6 weeks to do the on-site training. So I started doing that. We started establishing the Montessori school in our own home. That went really well. And I said, wait, there's an opportunity here. So if I get so many people looking for their little ones to find a really cool place where they can start, with positive enforcement and learning and hands-on and, all of that, let's build it out. Let's build it to something bigger. And I look for real estate in Munich. My gosh, if you've ever been to Munich, it's a beautiful city, but I think it's number 2 amongst the most expensive cities in Germany, and real estate is very hard to come by. And then you're talking about, a school building that needs to be up to code. It was, almost not doable. But Brigitta is tenacious. So if it doesn't work, it'll work a different way. And I said, hey, we've always wanted to go to the States. My husband was an exchange student in Minnesota during his high school years. I said, tell me more about Minnesota, because I've never been to Minnesota. Tell me more about Minnesota. And he tells me about the beautiful summers and the lakes and the parties and the fun and I think he called it the state bird was the mosquito, and all of that. And then he came to the point where he had to stand outside to wait for the school bus at below 40, at minus 40. And I'm like, wait, what did you say? Below 40? Why do you think I would move from a place that's already pretty cold, AKA Munich, Germany, where we have a lot, like our winters are a half a year or longer, to an even colder city? That makes no sense to me. I'm not doing that, right? You might like Minnesota. I'm not going. Go alone. And so, and then he said, well, tell me about where you went to school. And I said, well, I went to Tennessee, and the weather's actually really nice. And so long story short, we bought a house in Tennessee. We moved the school into the house. Out of that, we moved in. Oh boy, there's so much in that. So to sum it up just a little bit, I through my dad, I had U.S. citizenship, so I had to get the green card for our daughter and Christian, my husband, and I filed out all the papers, the petition, and all of that, and it took time and time. Now we did that in December. On Christmas of 2003, we came to the States and we made that decision to move to the States. Like, we came back in the airplane coming back. My husband actually had a contract as a CEO for a large organization in Berlin. He never looked at that contract. He said, that's not for me. I don't even want to look at it. We're going to the States. So we came back right after Christmas, right before New Year's. And I filed the petition and everything. We sold most of our stuff, packed some things in a container, and started that whole process. And in February, Brigitta also means not very patient. Brigitta goes to goes to the German to the U.S. Consulate General in Munich and says, "Hey guys, what's happening? Nothing's happening, and we're sitting here on packed bags, right?" They didn't like that so much. So they're like, let me see your passport. And then they kept it. And then they escorted me out. So I said, wait a minute, you guys, you can't take my passport. And they're like, who's got your passport? Like, literally, that's what they said. They said, who's got your passport? I said, well, you do. And they said, well, see, we are able to do that. So now get out. So they escorted me out. I called my husband from a telephone booth. I remember this British lady outside of the telephone booth telling her child, don't stare, observe, because I was just bawling. I didn't know what was going on. And I went home and I fell into this deep hole for days. I said, I thought it was our journey to go on. And now they took my passport. I don't know what to do. And my husband said, what are we going to do? And I said, we're not going to do anything right now. We're just going to wait. This is a test. We're going to wait. We're going to sit it out. One thing that I always told my children and my staff I can outwait anyone any day. So I said, we're just going to wait, right? That's all we can do. We have faith, we wait. And we waited. And like 10 days later, my passport came by FedEx back to our address where we were living with my in-laws. So April of 2004, mind you, we started the progress in December. Now that I'm looking back, right, December 2003, we started the progress. April 2004, we were actually moving. Our little one, she was 16, 17 months at the time. And my husband and I move into our house that we haven't seen yet, that we bought just from little, digital pictures. And if you know anything about digital pictures in 2004, they were little. There was really nothing to see on there. We move in, and Hurricane Ivan comes through, and our entire basement with all of our moving boxes just gets completely flooded with everything. And I'm like, okay, it's another test. What are we going to do? So there's a lot of tests. And I think this is, as humans, we're looking for evidence, and then we give that evidence meaning. And I could have easily given the evidence of my passport being seized, Hurricane Ivan destroying, most of our stuff, all of these things. I could have said, okay, we're done. We're moving back.
Right. But
I don't give up. So that's how we started the Montessori school. And then we started, the Montessori school there with 3 kids. I started the first money that I had, or the little money, we came with almost nothing in our pocket. The little money that I had, I invested in a membership of the Chamber of Commerce, because I realized I gotta be visible for people to know that I'm here. And that's where I got my first two students, plus our own daughter. And then quickly, 2 years later, we went into another bigger building. We built a building, and now we have 125 students. That's the story.
It's awesome. I love that. And it's true. You define what you want those signs to mean, whether it's a sign of no, let's turn back, or no, this is just patience. Let's get over the hump and continue to move forward. So I love that. Just about out of time here. So before I get to my final question, is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to bring up to my audience?
There's probably 1,000 things. There's probably 1,000 things. I think this is a good conversation for today. This is beautiful.
I love it. I really enjoyed it. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to find out more about the NLP Center? Where can they find Brigitta? So
either, and my spelling is going to be in the show notes, I assume. So just email me to Brigitta@Hoeferle.com. So it's my first name at my last name.com, or just Google Center of NLP. So Center, CenterOfNLP.com, Center of NLP. Or if you just Google Brigitta Hoeferle, there's literally only one Brigitta Hoeferle. There is a Brigitte with an E at the end, Hoeferle. That is my aunt, but she's not online, so you're good.
Perfect. So the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, and it comes from the opening lyrics of a song by Michael Franti, Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things and the whole world changes. So it's one of the little things that Brigitta does to make the world a little bit better place.
Yes. That just gave me the goosebumps. Was that a question?
Yes. What's one of the little things that you do to make the world a little bit better place?
Smile, listen, love.
I love that answer. I absolutely love that answer. And again, that's what that question is all about. It's about how those little things can actually help change the world. Throwing the pebble in the pond and creating that ripple effect with that smile. So I love that. Rita, I really enjoyed this conversation. We get down in the Atlanta area, we'll definitely look you up. And I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with me for sure. And for everybody out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com or danclouser.com. And be sure to head on over to Amazon, pick up a copy of my latest book, The Journey of My Mother's Son, Volume 1. Brigitta, thanks again. I really appreciate this.